welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really fascinating, some people are calling the Italy gene.
Right.
But let's be clear up front, it's not, a single gene. It's more like a symbol.
A symbol for Italy's incredibly diverse, ancient, and sometimes, controversial genetic history.
Exactly. I mean, just imagine what happens when you mix Etruscans, Romans, Greeks, North Africans, Normans, even Central Asians.
Over thousands of years.
Over 10,000 years, yeah. You get Italy. It's a place where DNA isn't just data, it's telling stories.
And that's really our mission today, isn't it? To unpack those stories. We want to explore how this unique genetic makeup is cropping up in conversations about health, about national identity, even our understanding of history itself.
Okay.
We've looked at a lot of recent research, some really eye-opening findings that we think you'll find pretty interesting.
Great. So where do we start? Maybe with Italy's geography.
Yeah.
As this sort of ancient crossroads.
Makes sense. Scientists have noted for ages that Italy's position right there between Europe, Africa, and the Middle East basically guaranteed it would be a genetic melting pot.
It couldn't really avoid it.
Pretty much. And a big study back in 2019 published in Science really brought this home. They mapped over 700 ancient genomes from Italy.
700 ancient ones. That's a lot.
It is. And what they found was pretty remarkable. Modern Italians carry genetic markers from at least 12 distinct ancestral populations.
12. Wow. Who are we talking about?
Well, you've got Neolithic farmers coming from Anatolia,
Okay.
steppe herders from Central Asia, North African Berbers, Phoenicians, Greeks, Celts. The list goes on.
That's incredible diversity.
It really is. And what's particularly interesting is that Southern Italians and Sicilians, they show up to a 25% genetic overlap with people from the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa.
25%. That's significant.
Very. And researchers think this links back directly to the ancient Greek colonies, Magna Graecia, and later centuries of Arab influence and rule, especially in Sicily.
Right.
So the big takeaway, really, is that the Italian genome is like a living historical archive. It documents all this migration, empire building, cultural fusion, arguably more than almost any other place in Europe.
A living history book written in DNA. I like that. It makes you think about history not just as something in books, but something we actually carry inside us.
Exactly.
And this connection between genes and, well, life, it extends to things like health, right? Which brings us to the famous Mediterranean diet.
Ah, yes, the diet.
Everyone knows it's healthy. It's praised worldwide. But here's a thought. What if it's not just the food? What if Italians are maybe genetically sort of tuned for it?
That's a really intriguing question, and researchers are definitely looking into it.
What are they finding?
They found that certain gene variants related to how we process lipids, fats, and oils are more common in some Italian populations, especially in the south and Sardinia.
Okay, like specific genes?
Yeah, variants of genes like APOA5 and FTO. These might, and I stress might, help metabolize fats like olive oil more efficiently.
Interesting. And does that connect to actual health outcomes?
Well, it's suggestive. Italy has one of the lowest rates of cardiovascular disease in Europe.
Despite all the pasta and cheese.
Right, and their life expectancy is really high, 83.1 years, according to the WHO in 2023. That puts them in the global top 5.
That's pretty amazing. But isn't there a bit of controversy here? A word of caution.
Absolutely, it's crucial. While the genetic links are fascinating, many scientists warn against overstating their role.
Why is that?
Because focusing too much on genes could make us overlook other critical factors. Things like, access to fresh food consistently, the quality of healthcare people get, lifestyle factors, walking more, strong social bonds.
Socioeconomic factors.
Exactly. Those play a huge part in health outcomes, and we can't just attribute everything to genetics. It's a complex picture.
So it's not genetic destiny. It's more like genes might offer a slight edge, but environment and lifestyle are still massive pieces of the puzzle?
Precisely. You've got it.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, speaking of unique genetic stories within Italy, let's zoom in on one specific place, Sardinia.
Ah, Sardinia. A geneticist's dream in many ways.
Why? What makes this island so special for researchers?
Well, a couple big things. First, Sardinians have remarkably low genetic admixture. Meaning their gene pool hasn't mixed much with outside populations for a very long time. We're talking maybe 5,000 years or more. It's
Yeah.
like a genetic time capsule from the Neolithic or early Bronze Age.
Wow, like stepping back in genetic time.
Kind of, yeah. It gives us a unique window into ancient European genetics. And second, Sardinia is one of the world's blue zones.
Right, where people live exceptionally long lives, centenarians.
Exactly. They have a high number of people living to 100 or more, and studies have found they have higher frequencies of certain gene variants linked to longevity, like alleles in the FOXO3A gene.
Which is involved in cell repair, things like that.
Things like cellular repair, stress resistance, yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially contributing to that long lifespan.
But there's always a but, isn't there? Is there a downside to this genetic isolation?
There often is. It's like the other side of the coin. This genetic uniqueness also means Sardinians have higher rates of certain autoimmune diseases.
Like what?
Multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, and also a higher prevalence of beta thalassemia, that hereditary blood disorder that affects hemoglobin.
Right, common in Mediterranean regions, but particularly noted in Sardinia.
Yes. So this isolation preserves ancient lineages and might boost longevity, but it also concentrates the risk for certain inherited conditions.
So it really makes you, the listener, think. Is this kind of genetic isolation a gift, unlocking secrets to long life? Or is it a gamble, carrying these specific health risks? It's a fascinating trade-off.
It truly is.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to something that can be a bit of a sensitive topic. We've talked about this amazing diversity, this rich tapestry, but some political groups have tried to use genetics differently, haven't they, to define who is truly Italian?
Unfortunately, yes. That's a narrative that has emerged. Some groups, particularly leaning towards certain political ideologies, argue that specific regions, often the North, are somehow more genetically Italian than others, like the South.
Based on perceived genetic differences.
Based on interpretations, often misinterpretations of genetic data, yeah. Trying to draw hard lines where the science actually shows gradients and mixing.
And this isn't just academic debate, it has real-world consequences.
Absolutely. It feeds into those old, persistent North-South divides within Italy itself. It can fuel anti-immigration rhetoric, suggestive only certain ancestries belong, and it sparks these really complex, often heated debates about what ethnic Italian even means today.
So how do historians and geneticists react to this?
Well, historians in particular are quite vocal in warning against this kind of misuse. They argue that DNA is being twisted to fit nationalist agendas, when the reality, the actual story told by the genes, is one of incredible mixing. Italy's strength, genetically speaking, is its diversity, stitched together from all the cultures that have passed through or settled there.
So the science actually contradicts the nationalist narrative.
Fundamentally, yes. The science points towards Italy being a melting pot, not a genetically pure entity.
Okay, so after going through all this, the ancient mixing, the diet connection, Sardinia's uniqueness, and the political misuse, let's circle back. Does the Italy gene exist?
Well, in a literal singular sense, no, there's no single gene for being Italian.
Right.
But does it exist as, let's say, a unique biological fingerprint? A result of thousands of years of specific migrations, cultural contacts, adaptations? Absolutely, yes. In that sense, it's very real.
It's the pattern, not a single point.
Exactly. It's the overall pattern, the tapestry. And just think about some of the data points we mentioned. That high life expectancy, 83.1 years.
Impressive.
The up to 25% genetic overlap between Southern Italians and Eastern North African groups. And Sardinians holding on to that ancient Neolithic ancestry with so little mixing, it all paints a picture of a really unique genetic landscape shaped by a unique history.
So as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to take away and consider. Should national identity be rooted primarily in genetics? Or is it more about shared culture, shared language, shared history, shared values?
That's a deep question.
And specifically for Italy, does its incredible DNA diversity make it stronger, more resilient? Or does the way it's sometimes discussed risk turning it into a political tool? Something to think about, the amazing, complex story written in all our cells.